Pippa Pig and the Big Night Out. The pig sirens were becoming more and more frequent. It was dangerous to venture out during the pig sirens, but sometimes you couldn't help it. Pigs had been fed so many growth hormones to try and meet the insatiable demand for bacon and sausages that things had got out of control. They had grown to ginormous sizes, and the humans could no longer contain them in barns or pens. Now the pigs roamed around hunting humans and eating them. The pigs had learnt to speak English and had developed their own civilization on one of the many wastelands. It was a no-go territory for anyone who valued their life. They had a taste for human flesh and regularly conducted raids into human towns. They were fierce warriors and loved to tattoo each other with stories of their great deeds. The more tattoos they had, the more respected they were. They claimed that Peppa Pig was their ancestral goddess, spiritual leader, and universal mother. That pig civilization was more ancient than a human life, proved so by the huge digital imprint of Peppa Pig and the infinite amount of plastic idols of Peppa that were to be found in any rubbish dump or site that had been inhabited by humans. They had giant plasma TVs that only played Peppa Pig on endless loops. There were so many episodes it took a year to get back to Series 1. In the human town, it was the day of Sophie's hen do, and all the girls were coming round. They had rented a pink limousine and were all looking forward to it as a break from the daily grind of life in a dangerous and broken world. In the olden days, they would have all jumped on a plane to Lanzarote or somewhere with good weather and cheap drinks, but you never knew when flash floods, tornadoes or heat waves would hit, and many resorts had been washed away. It was actually safer to stay home and just try to avoid carnivorous pigs. Sophie was clinging on to the traditions of the old world in getting married anyway. Most people didn't bother and just swapped partners every 3 months. That way, you continually only got the exciting part of the relationship, and when things started to sour, you moved on. The idea that couples had stayed together for a lifetime was quite comical and hard to believe. But Sophie had always been a fan of history in the olden days. She had liked to listen to her gran talk about birds, trees, and the post office. It all sounded so romantic. She wasn't so bothered about the staying together forever part of marriage, but she did want the big party, the attention and the celebrations. It looked fun, and there wasn't much fun around these days. Sophie had been planning her wedding through her last several partners. She had been waiting for one to come up whose name started with the same letter as hers, a Sally or a Stephen, because she wanted the double S of their names on the wedding invite. She liked alliterations. They gave her a cosy, satisfied feeling. Best of all would be another Sophie, so they could be the Sophies, or better still, someone already with an alliterated name, and then they could double barrel it. Sophie and Sam Smith Saunders. It sounded wonderful. People with a name like that could never be lonely or frightened. It didn't really matter to Sophie what they were like. People were pretty much the same in her opinion. What mattered most was that they also wanted to get married. When Sandy Shaw had come up, Sophie couldn't believe her luck. Sandy was a marine historian specialising in tinned fish. Sandy was working on an important project to try to bring back mackerel using the fragments from a tin that had been found on a rubbish dump. It wasn't looking very hopeful, which made Sandy rather gloomy. Sophie was hoping the wedding would cheer things up and stop Sandy complaining about jellyfish. Phillipa Pig was watching TV and filing her nails into points. She liked them really sharp, all the better for itching her thick skin. All giant pigs were horrifically itchy. It was one of the side effects of the hormones. The pigs found different ways to deal with it. It was mostly a permanent low-level torture, but sometimes the itching would become unbearable and the pig would lose control and all hell would break loose. On the TV, it was the day when Daddy Pig dropped his keys down the drain. Philippa wondered if Daddy Pig had terrible itching all over his body. Maybe that's why he dropped his keys. There were no male pigs anymore. Female pigs had learnt to spontaneously reproduce, so male pigs had become redundant. The pigs didn't see themselves as male or female. They were simply pig. The most important things in pig culture were worship of Peppa and doing terrifying deeds. Like all pigs, Philippa was obsessed with the great goddess Peppa. Peppa's word was law. She was the blazing sun, the shriveled moon, and the toxic water in their lives. Although just a small pig, her influence had shaped and informed nearly every aspect of the giant pig society in learning how to behave like humans. They hung on her ancient words of wisdom. They discussed deep into the night what her teaching meant, how they could better serve her purpose, and what was her purpose. It was one of those funny idiosyncrasies of religion that there was no mention of devouring humans in Peppa Pig's teaching, but there was also no mention of not doing it. It was one of those thoughts that popped into the head occasionally, but it would have been a great deal of inconvenience to themselves to follow through on any doubts. So the hunting of humans and consuming of their flesh was an unquestioned part of their culture. There really was no reason to stop, as they enjoyed it very much, and what else would they eat? Phillipa flexed her muscles and took a puff of her pipe. She loved to admire her muscles. She liked to flex them and watch her tattoos come to life and dance. It was good memories. She loved her big, strong body and the power it gave her. If only she wasn't permanently itchy, life would be perfect. Was she feeling itchy or hungry? It was hard to tell. Both those things made her angry. She turned up the TV to try and drown out the itching with noise. The Peppa theme tune sang out. Its comforting rhythms were soothing. But this time the words were different. Phillipa wasn't even sure if there had been words before, but Peppa's message was very clear. "Go and eat some humans, go and eat some humans," it said. Sophie was also admiring herself in the mirror in a retro sequined dress. She loved the way it sparkled. She wondered who had sewn on all the sequins and if they had enjoyed their work, knowing what joy it would bring to the wearer. Sophie and her friends loaded into the pink limo, hair bouncing, thighs flashing, giggling and laughing. They sang along to old pop songs, and the vintage glitter ball in the limo made it look like the car was full of magical moonbeams. "This is it," thought Sophie, as she swigged her plastic cup of fizzy Floop Secco. "This is what it's all about. This is the greatest moment of my life. Even if the marriage is shit, at least I had this. I wish life was just one long hen do. The old folks really did get some things right." It was a strange, unspoken rule that you couldn't have the hen do without the marriage. It just didn't work without the marriage. People had tried before, but you couldn't raise the same sentiments. Nelly Furtado's "I'm Like a Bird" was playing at full volume as they sang along, blasting into the chauffeur's ears, which meant that no one heard the pig sirens going.